Welcome, everyone. Some of you I know personally, some I have been following you, and not in a creepy way, but in an inspired way, because most of you are just doing some phenomenal things out in community. And I wanted to do something a little different. I've talked a lot about community with many of you. I wanted to really dive into something that really resonates with me. And before I get started, I'm going to make sure that my screen does all the things it's supposed to. So let me go ahead and start sharing. And it should be working now. Yes. Okay. Awesome. First and foremost, again, thank you for trusting me to, just be here. It's the last session of the day. And I know some of you have been up very, very early today doing who knows what. I woke up early with a sick kid and a migraine, and it now has transitioned into me feeling all this fuel from you all. So I'm really excited to get started. So gut check yourself before you wreck yourself. For 90s hip hop, this is the culture that raised me. So I had to throw some of that into my presentation. And honestly, it's just a topic that really resonates with me. And I think it really just comes from, it really stems from growing older and also recognizing to start trusting myself more, not only on a professional level, but on a personal level. And that takes some time. It definitely adds value to how we live, how we build community intentionally. And honestly, when we talk about something like this, it definitely adds to our industry's dynamics. So let's get this party started. Yes? So what is a gut check, right? We all have heard it, maybe in other words like instinct, hunch, sixth sense, but mostly we know it as our intuition. And sometimes we think about that. And personally, when I think about my intuition, I think about my mother. Very interesting connection. But I remember growing up and my mom was always on point with, I don't have a good feeling about this, Celina. I don't really know if that person is, there's something coming in that I just don't feel good about. And she would tell me this in English and in Spanish. And when she would start speaking to me in Spanish at a rapid rate and it would start with that, I knew I had to start listening. And without a doubt, every single time, it's like she just absolutely knew. And as I've gotten older, I've started recognizing that that voice that she was listening to has become a lot louder internally. So maybe some of you have heard it as, my gut tells me that we should go in this direction, or my hunch is to go with option A. So honestly, like how it sounds and how it feels is really going to be different for all of us, but it does play a very important part. It's our internal mechanism. It's our checks and balances. And it really helps us make very intentional decisions, whether we know it or not. So one thing, that I hear sometimes is we go back and forth with data and intuition. Some people feel that intuition is very woo-woo, which a term that I learned recently, and I'm far behind the curve when it comes to that. But honestly, we have seen more and more development about talking about our EQ and really, really tapping into that and making sure, aside from community, because we know that's an important part of who we are and how we show up, but more importantly, how we push that out externally, right? When we talk to people, when we're actually building a business case, when we're making rapid decisions. So this really resonated with me. And it says, intuition is big data for your body. It's the result of your body's own algorithms processing millions of data points that surround you every day. Just sit with that for a second. So, we are constantly embedded with data and community. We are constantly having conversations. We are constantly trying to accumulate information to make the right choice. But sometimes our intuition, based off of all the experiences that we've gone through, has already built this internal database of experiences, of moments, of memories, of bad decisions, of good decisions, of proactive thinking, of reactive thinking, and it helps us really tap into what we know. And being able to tap into what we know and start leveraging it as a tool, so that way we become really great CMs, so we become really great parents, friends, family members, however we decide to show up. It's pivotal in how we continue to work. So, does that mean that I'm saying scrap data? No. That's like me just telling everybody that, nothing exists. And on a community management side, data is my best friend. So really, it's aligning the two. It's recognizing that they both work hand in hand. One does not replace the other. They actually help you make more informed decisions on a way that makes sense, in a way that helps you elevate, whether it's making decisions faster, whether it's confirming that maybe those decisions were good or bad. It's really just tapping in and driving those decisions, but it's not minimizing data. So Capgemini actually had this really great report. And one thing that really stood out to me was that it said, intuition helps a leader be creative and innovative as it is a combination of wisdom, knowledge, lessons, and experience. Intuitive leadership drives action and avoids analysis paralysis. Now, let me ask you, how many of you have had that moment where you're diving in so deep into something that you've just almost to the point where you've forgotten the high level thing that you were trying to focus on? Evidently, I'm really passionate about this. But honestly, I have gotten into that position where I dive so deep into something that I don't even recognize that I am buried over my head and I am not making quality decisions anymore. So what I decided and what I thought would be really helpful is to think about 3 ways, okay? Building your intuition is a muscle. It really is. It's innate, but learning to trust it, learning to use it, and learning to be able to effectively produce things while you are listening to it, whole different thing. So what I recognize is that we kind of go into these spaces, and these 3 components have really helped me personally. It's first, listen often. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Create a space. We are often creating spaces for everybody else. We're creating spaces for people to connect. We're creating spaces for people to belong. We're creating spaces to just be able to share resources and tools and all these wonderful things. But creating a space for us to acknowledge that we have this, what I consider this superpower within us, is really, it has to be intentional. And the third one is pause and assess, right? So when you think about this, we, again, going back into the example of diving deep and then getting into the weeds and going so far into the weeds that you don't recognize that you're so far into it that you're no longer being productive in what you're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So let's go into number 1. Okay. So just think about it. There is always something constantly happening within us, right? Our body is telling us, hey, you have a pain here. You're stressed. Today I had a migraine. Not even kidding. I haven't had a migraine in maybe 2 years. But my body was telling me something. Maybe it was because I was excited. Maybe it was because my daughter's sick. Maybe it's the world around me. But either way, it's a mechanism within us that we have to listen to. What's going on? Am I not getting enough water? All of these things. Our intuition does the same. So think about it. How can we listen to our body more effectively to really gain insight into our intuition? A lot of it, I think, goes into how we provide time to trust and to listen to what our body is saying. So meditations, I don't know how many times I'll just sit in the morning and I have my time to meditate. But also when I hear all of these things, or I feel, my intuition usually works in a very interesting way. My stomach will start to rumble, and it's weird because I'm like, am I hungry? Am I stressed? What's going on? I just ate 5 minutes ago. And then I start overthinking, and then I start stressing, and I overthink, and then I stress about the overthinking, and then I realize, oh, it's doing that thing again. And so what I have decided to do every morning is to set a list for myself. It helps me just really gain insight into programs I'm building, into things dealing with my kids, into how I'm showing up for myself. But what it does is it allows me to start trusting what's going on here and here and here. And I want you to think of it as the engine in your car, right? Our body is this huge megaphone. It's like our intuition is this huge megaphone. When we think of a car, we have that car engine, right? And then the engine light, that horrible little engine light when it turns on, and all of a sudden you're like, are you serious? I'm about to go get my inspection. Worst time for your engine light to come on, right? But at that point, your car is telling you something, aside from just making your life a little bit more difficult, but it's telling you that something's not right, right? It's telling us that if you want me to run smoothly, you need to listen. You need to do a check-in. It's the same thing with our body. We have these stress indicators. We have our heart rate. Like right now, my heart rate is, not gonna lie, probably, I won't even tell you what it says. But we get migraines, we get changes in breathing. Even right now, I was so like, deep breath, Celina, and we start to recognize that our body's doing all of these things to let us know that something's not right, or to assess, to pause, to get back into it and say, okay, am I going in the right direction? It's another part of our intuition that we really have to really sync our, it's just something that matters. It's something that really resonates. It's something that is signaling internally that we have to listen to. And yes, it sounds woo-woo again, and I'm using that term again because I feel really cool using it. But I have 2 daughters, guys. You guys have to give me some, like, it's as cool as I'm gonna get. But honestly, this is something that I've really like tapped into. And I've talked to friends that really focus, that are therapists, that have really tried to embed that even within their, when they're having these sessions. It's like, what are you feeling? Where do you think that's stemming from? And one thing that I remember, which goes into my next slide, is creating a space. One of my previous teams and one of my previous managers, I love that woman to death. And if she's on here, she will know after this example. But she used to come in and say, I need you to gut check me. And I remember going in and being like, what does she mean? And she was essentially creating a space for us to be able to let our intuition come into the picture and be able to have these discussions of, hey, I feel like I'm going in the right direction, but I need somebody just to kind of gut check. It's that trust element. It's establishing a safe, inclusive space to be able to have these discussions. Because sometimes when you say my intuition says, people will not like immediately accept that because they're like, oh, intuition versus data. You're like, no, but I checked the data, but my intuition, my gut says, based off of what I'm seeing here, we should go in this direction. Because you have to do it quickly. So you're like, data's not going to be able to tell me that. It's not going to tell me what the actual outcome is, or income. But you really have to be able to step into that and trust it. So creating a space, not only for yourself, but for your team around you and for your community, your internal, your personal community, to be able to recognize that you need to have intentional spaces, both personally and professionally, are super helpful and allow us to build and work more intentionally. So again, think about how you do that. Pause and assess. Sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. How many of you have heard that? We are so quick and want something done to accomplish, to set a goal, to hit a key metric, to show that we are capable, whatever, fill in the blank, right? We begin to spiral. Then we resist, possibly even burn out, which I'm reading this phenomenal book. If you haven't read it, you should. Because we are so into hitting a target when it may not actually be the right one in the first place or the right direction. So that's where intuition continues to come in and just kind of gut check us. And it's a checks and balance for us to be able to say, are we going in the right direction? Ooh, those body signs are telling me, I don't feel good about it, or I feel really at peace with this, and it's really just wanting me to dive in that direction. The data helps support a lot of that. And again, like it has to be a clear balance between both, but sometimes when we need to make a quick decision, we don't always have the data to do that, and we have to be able to feel comfortable and trust our intuition enough to be able to jump quickly. So make sure though that when you're having these signals, when you're deciding that I'm not going in the right direction, that I feel like I'm burning out, I'm spiraling once again, that you hit the brakes. And I know I'm making a lot of car references, but think about it. When you're in a car, there are certain things that you're capable of doing. Certain times you're in a position where you're not paying attention and you crash. It's the same thing here. It's constantly being aware of the decisions you're making, listening to your body, creating a space to be able to effectively understand how to build intentionally, leverage what you have within you and the years of experience that you've gained, whether it's in community management, whether it's being a good friend, whether it's buying a house, whatever it is, you have gone through multiple experiences to be able to understand what might work and what might not. Your body is capturing all this information and saying, nope, I remember in 1996 when you decided to do so-and-so, that was not a good idea. And you might not remember that, but your body's saying, I remember this feeling. So listen, honestly, when I think of all of these three things that I shared with you, it's actually going to be an individual situation, an individual experience. And nobody's intuition is going to be the same in terms of how it signals and says, yo, you are not going down the right direction. Or, hey, this is very different. Or, yes, check that. I'm down with that. Because at the end, all of our experiences are very different. But what we do have is we have the expertise. We have to start trusting ourselves more. Because honestly, when we think about it as a community manager, we have to trust our intuition when we bring people into our community. When we're building a brand ambassador program, who do those people look like? When you vet people to make sure that the right people are helping lead your community. When you're thinking about, buying a car. Well, maybe not that one. I mean, sometimes it's just pure impulse and that looks really pretty. But aside from that, those key big decisions, that's when you're going to feel it most. That's when that voice is going to be much, much louder. And that's when you're going to start recognizing that data will take you here and your intuition will take you the rest of the way. So make sure to listen to that. Be very intentional, because what it'll do is you'll start recognizing that you start building more intentionally and also more strategically. So with that, I wanted to share a few cool quotes from people you might know. I mean, I would like to know them, but people that we've heard of. And just take a look. There's some really cool quotes that really speak to intuition. And all of these individuals are leaders in their areas. And so when you think about it, and when you question what that feeling is, when you question if you're trusting yourself enough, when you question if you're creating a space for your team to feel comfortable to be able to gut check one another, or whether you're gut checking yourself. If you could see my desk right now, you would see 20 million Post-its, and I apologize to all the trees, but these are kind of just little points that I make for myself that say, Celina, pause. Celina, are you checking in? Celina, have you made space? Celina, have you like, one of them says, what do you want to be in the world? And for me, another one's walk your walk. Michelle Obama, thank you very much. But again, like, it's practicing what I'm preaching. It's practicing with intention. It's making sure that I'm doing the right things so I can do the right things in my industry, so I can do the right things at home, and so I start doing the right things for me. So I'm going to leave you with that, but I also wanted to ask a question before I jump off, because I would love to hear an example where your intuition played a pivotal part in your life. If you can just put it on the chat, I would love to see that. For me, one of the most pivotal parts was when I got into community. If you know my industries that I've been in and the jumps I've made, I listened to my intuition. And that's when I started in community. 6 years later, here I am. So again, thank you so much for being here and dealing with my craziness, because it has been quite a day of sick kiddos and migraines, but I'm really happy to be here and be able to share a little bit about what intuition is. Well, you already know that, but what it means to me, how I've developed that muscle, and how I continue to do so. So thanks, everyone.
Celina, thank you. The way you spoke, the way you actually accentuated some of the things that you wanted to say was just very heartfelt, and it really resonated with the people listening to you. So certainly, just checking the chat myself. So it's been a very nice and serene session, so to speak. To end the day. It's been obviously a hard, difficult day for you, and still, you've delivered this amazing message to us. So thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. So definitely, we have some questions, and we actually have amazingly, we actually have a few minutes to answer them. It's been such a roller coaster of a day in terms of the sessions. So. Alexandra is asking, is this presentation going to be available to share? Let me answer that differently. This presentation is actually being recorded, so it's going to be available to share as a recording, the entire session itself. So hopefully that might answer the question. So you might be able to, just relive through it. So Pixie, hello, and I know her personally, and I hope you're keeping well. Pixie is asking, what book did you mention you were reading? So that was a question that popped up during the day.
Here you go. So the secret to unlocking the stress cycle. And some of you on here, Jed Lopez knows I've talked about this, but this is such a great book. I actually heard the podcast on Brene Brown, and I had to go get it. And it's wonderful. And it talks about human givers, which community managers are human givers. So it really jumps into why it's so important for us to be able to really tap into how to unravel the stress cycle that we go through on a regular basis. So, yeah.
Certainly. Yeah, definitely. So it's a good recommendation. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks for sharing all the quotes. So we have some more questions. There's one more question that came up once again from Pixie. We've got time to answer it. How do you recommend to cure burnout, which was actually something that we talked today in another session as well, after it happened already? Your pointers are amazing to potentially avoid it. So cool. Such a great question.
Yeah. Wow. That's a really great question. So I'm very much about retrospectives personally, even as a community manager. But what I've done is I go back and I realize where I start seeing patterns, right, of burnout for me. And I now am starting to recognize that I have very, indeed, like trustful patterns that'll say, oh, you're starting to not want to read anymore. You're starting to disconnect from people that you care about. You're starting to not care about certain things that you cared about before. So I started recognizing those, and I actually put them down on a piece of paper. And they're signs similar to anything else that we might do. We might actually have a list of what a great ambassador looks like. But now I actually have a list for myself of these patterns to say, oh, Celina, it's time. It's time. So what I do is when I start seeing that, is I start moving my body. I start having deeper conversations with people that are really close to me, my internal circle. And I've also had, family and friends that I'm really close to. I said, if you start seeing these patterns and I'm not recognizing them, I need you to call me out. And in a good way, because I know that their interest in my well-being is top of mind. So they've provided a space for me to say, hey, I'm recognizing that this is happening, what's going on. So I've put these little rituals or little moments around my life to say this isn't going to happen again. And I also talk to a therapist. So, and I'm always open to talk to people about that. But yeah, even when I'm at my best, I continue to have those check-ins because I recognize that burning out is very easy, especially now in a virtual world. So it's very similar to these, like creating a space, listening often, pause and assess. That really helps with burnout too.
Fantastic. Thank you for that answer. So that brings us very neatly to the closing of the day. So Celina, thank you very much. It's been golden. So a lot of very deep and important issues discussed today, and yours was no exception. So I hope it really helped people out. So certainly it was an absolute pleasure having you here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.